Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey, Seattle Kraken podcast. And RJ, we finally get to talk about Seattle Kraken games that mean something. And I cannot be more excited to do so, especially because, RJ, Kraken are 2-0.
Yeah, these games are worth actual points in the standings. And you know what, Dylan? The Kraken have 4 of them through 2 games. I don't think they could have any more.
I mean, they couldn't. So they are in fact getting it done when it matters, which is of course the regular season. That's what we've always said on this podcast. Don't fact check us
for now. For now.
Situation might change come mid-April. The Kraken have been off to a fantastic start to the season. We're going to break it all down. All of the, how it's working. Are they really this good? How are the young guys fitting into this, or maybe not fitting into it? All of that stuff is going to be on today's episode. But of course, first we got to start, RJ, talking about the law offices of Rico Tessador, the wonderful sponsor of our podcast here. And while I could talk about Rico Dowdle for a second week in a row, I'm instead, RJ, going to talk about how much of a great fit Mason Marchment really is on this team if you then want to talk about a personal injury attorney. Because watching Mason Marchment again, right? Like every year, we always talk about this. When Dallas would come to town, we talk about Mason Marchment and how if you just watch him, right, he's going to be an entertaining player. I think he was on your 3 most entertaining players to watch list, just because something weird is always going to happen out there with him. And we got that really in both games, but especially last game where he somehow fell down, rised while still while lateral, he rised up in the air somehow even more while falling down, and then came back down, and probably flew about good 15 feet. And it just feels like Mason Marchment, if you just took a highlight reel of all of those moments, it would be the perfect ad for a personal injury attorney like our friend Rico Tessador.
Have you ever moved like this? Has this ever happened to your body? You may be entitled to financial compensation.
If any of these things happen to you and you're not playing the sport of hockey, call Rico. That's basically what the ad would be. But watching Mason Marchment, that's all I could think about. I was just like, if these happened in any other setting, these are the ultimate call Rico moments.
Oh, definitely. Man, yeah, you don't want that stuff to happen to you outside of hockey, where you're wearing all the pads and everything. Even at the average,
I was gonna say, you probably still don't want it
wearing all
hockey.
the pads. Yeah, I think anyone but Mason Marchment would not do well under that circumstance.
Yes, but it's just a reminder, guarantee you there will be another moment at some point during this week of Kraken hockey where something's going to happen to Mason Marchment that's going to look like it's straight out of a commercial or something for a personal injury attorney. And while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricointessador.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. And that counts for you as well, Mason Marchment. Rico will help you. Trust me. If you need it.
Should you ever need to call.
Yes. Before we dive into everything, RJ, just want to remind everybody about our upcoming Patreon schedule. And that does include in just 3 days, us doing our live game commentary over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey for the Kraken visiting your Ottawa Senators. RJ.
Yes. If you listen to the Red Glare podcast on our Patreon, I went in big on the Ottawa Senators last year. It paid off. Doubling down here this year, but not this game. I said it's the one game all season they're going to lose, but then they went ahead and lost another game beforehand. But we get to watch the Kraken play the Ottawa Senators on Thursday. It's going to be our first one of the regular season. And you know what? The Kraken are going to have a winning record going into that game. So we get to kind of break down the new Lane Lambert style that we're going to talk about plenty on this podcast, but we're going to see it as the game goes on and point out lots of little things too. Because I know, Dylan, there were plenty of things during these first 2 games where the 2 of us up in the press bridge just turned to each other and made little notes like, oh, look at that little thing that Winterton's doing, or, whatever, playing in a way that they hadn't been before. So we'll talk about it a little bit here, but it's going to be so fun to go through an entire game, be able to point out those moments. So looking forward to that. Then we're going to have a little bit later in the month my Armchair GM stream on the 27th. That is I believe that's a Monday. Yeah, Monday the 27th. Where, I mean, it's interesting with the Kraken starting off a little hot. Some potential possibilities to talk about. I mean, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to mention some ways that, maybe this could help the Kraken in unforeseen ways, but we're really going to go into it on the Armchair GM stream. And then your prospect chat on the 30th. That's a Thursday. Both of those at 7 p.m., by the way. And yeah, some interesting stuff from the young guys. The Firebirds are finally have their season going, and oh boy, do they have a bunch of young players who are getting some bigger roles this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I needed it. It's a little late in the month, but it's because I just wanted to have enough time to go out there, get video, go over things, and have plenty for everybody for that prospect chat. Can't wait for that. And then one last thing before we get underway here, just a reminder about the post-game live schedule this year. We are not doing post-game lives after every single Kraken game this season. Instead, it is only once a week after every game that falls on a Tuesday. And if the Kraken don't have a game on a Tuesday, it will then take place on after the Wednesday game that they have the following day. That is the way the schedule just kind of always works out. We'll let you know if anything changes in there around things, but that is the post-game live schedule for this year. It was great to be with everybody after the home opener, RJ, really the opening game of the season, and doing post-game live with everybody there. It was a lot of fun doing that again, and in lieu of being able to do the post-game lives after every game, you and I are going to record little brief, like 3-minute videos after all of the games and kind of put those out, or at least all the home games, because we're together and can easily do that, and put those out on the social media feeds and stuff. And we are still soliciting names for what to call those shorts. Had some good suggestions though on Instagram the other night, but just wanted to remind everybody that is the schedule for this year.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, thank you everyone who gave the name suggestions too after that short, because we still do want to share our thoughts. And unfortunately, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense like for us to do it every single game when we need the time also to incorporate like PWHL coverage coming later in the year and other things as well, with our plans for the Red Glare podcast and all that stuff. So just something we kind of had to do time wise. We do miss everybody. Like it was weird, after the last game, not doing the post game live. And it's something that hopefully in the future we can go back to. But for this season, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially after such an exciting finish, RJ, because the Kraken, they're playing well, man. They're doing it.
They are.
They're doing it. Not only do you pick up that win against Anaheim opening night, but then you're able to get the 2-1 victory in overtime over the Vegas Golden Knights, RJ. This is the Kraken beating good teams, right? Or at least a good team. Well, jury's still out on the Anaheim Ducks.
But a very good team.
But a very good team in Vegas, and they really held their own during that game, RJ. And so I think it's time for us to talk about, does this team have an identity? Because after 2 games, it kind of looks like they do.
I'm going to go ahead and say yes. They absolutely have an identity. And the Ducks game, first period was rough, but they figured it out in the final 2 periods. And those of you who were with us for the post game after that, maybe a little surprised that I was as positive as I was, especially because early in the game, I'm like, oh no, here we go again. They haven't learned anything through the first period. I know I was saying a lot of that to you, but I was really convinced over the final 2 periods, but I was still skeptical because it was the Ducks, because I don't think they're going to be all that great this season, but Vegas was going to be the real test. And I was thoroughly impressed through all 3 periods against the Vegas Golden Knights. The Kraken stuck to the way they wanted to play, and it was really effective. And they got a win against a better team. And I'm fully on board. They have an identity. And also because we're getting that messaging from everybody exactly how they want to play. And I think it's pretty clear what that identity is. I'll let you speak soon on it because you're, the big X's and O's guy. But as Jared McCann said, defense first. When he was asked about it after the Vegas game, he said, and I'll quote him, "It's boring hockey. I know people don't really like that, but that's how you got to win games." And I think the team's fully embraced it. And I don't think the fans mind at this point if they're going to get wins.
Exactly. I don't think fans care as long as the team is winning, as long as they're putting out full 60-minute efforts too. And that's certainly what we saw Saturday against Vegas, was a full 60-minute effort. They came out with their game plan. They executed the game plan. It was more than a 60-minute effort. It was a nearly full 65-minute effort by just a couple seconds. And that's what fans wanted to see, right? That's what was missing last year. And you mentioned that everybody's messaging is kind of the same. I mean, people's messaging was the same last year, but it didn't match their actions out there on the ice. This year,
Right.
the messaging is the same from front office, coaching staff, players, but what we're actually getting on the ice, the on ice product is matching that messaging. And that's really the thing that makes this feel like it's something, right? Like that even though it's only 2 games, we can take that and say, look, they are in fact playing to what they want to be doing. This is the plan. This is their identity. This is what we can actually expect for the rest of the season. And that's something that we just did not have early season last year. And you could argue didn't really have it throughout the season last year. And so that I think is really exciting. As for what this identity really means out there on the ice and what it is, I mean, broadly, we're seeing it. It's going to be defensively minded, like Jared McCann said, like you just spoke about. It's going to rely on the goaltender to make some saves. Thankfully, Joey Decord's already looking great back there, and he is making those saves. And it's going to really, rely on them controlling the puck, controlling the pace of play, limiting other teams' transitional, opportunities and attacks. That's something they did very well against Vegas. Something Vegas has always wanted to do. We talk about that every year when Vegas comes to Seattle. RJ Bruce Cassidy, he wants those guys going out there attacking in transition. Kraken completely shut that down. I'm going to be really interested to see if over the course of, the next week or so, the strategy maybe changes based on what opponent they're facing, because it really did feel like they took away all of the things Vegas wanted to do, including Vegas's early power plays. I'm just kind of intrigued to see if this is just like a general strategy or if they're going to try to match what other teams are doing and kind of take away their strengths. Because if they do that, then I think we're really in for something. But the bottom line is they want to play defensive. They want to control at 5-on-5 the puck. They want to have that time of possession. And they're not necessarily going to get a lot of scoring chances themselves, right? Not a lot of shots on goal. Certainly not a lot of high quality stuff all the time. But we are seeing their forms of creating things, right? Send it back to the point. Get lots of point shots, but at least there's traffic in front now, right? And we've seen some goals scored that way from this team. So I think that there's, you know, I could get into it more, but I just kind of wanted to like lay out like the basics, and that is just going to be puck possession, defense, and relying on Joey to make some clutch saves. And then you try to win on special teams, right? We see power play goals already from the Kraken this year. That's going to be where the difference is made.
Right. It's going to be special teams taking the opportunities when you get them, or like the Mason Marchment goal in the Anaheim game. I look at the Anaheim game and I think even though Vegas is maybe more of a blueprint for how they want to play against better teams, the individual moments from the Anaheim game, you mentioned players going net front for those point shots. They get their first goal of the season like 3 minutes in because Ellie Tolvanen sets a perfect screen. Vince Dunn shoots it past Dostal, and you have the first goal of the game, and that's huge for them. But also, the transition opportunities where you have Brandon Montour steal the puck off Troy Terry, and it creates this situation where you've got this 2-on-1 going down to the zone and you can score before the other team is able to get into any kind of defensive position. It's taking advantage of those moments. And then in the Vegas game, you have the power play where you take advantage and score there. That's what it's going to be all about. At 5-on-5, not generating a whole lot. I mean, the Kraken have the 10th fewest shots on goal in the NHL right now. They're not shooting a lot. You probably noticed the shot counter where they're getting outshot pretty heavily in their first 2 games, but they're relying on the goalie to make saves. They're usually lower quality shots. There haven't been any plays where I thought, oh, just Joey's had no chance at this. That's really unfortunate. So that's really good. You want to give him a chance on every single shot. And then, like you said, special teams, the power play. I like the way they've been moving the puck around. They've only had 5 power play opportunities so far, really limited sample size. They have 1 goal on the 5. So just 20% power play percentage. Too early to look at those numbers, but I've been impressed by what I'm seeing. The varying ways that they're trying to set up chances. It looks like they actually have a win condition at the end, something that they're actually going for. And there's a few of them. It's not just one predictable thing. So I've been really impressed there.
Yeah, I think, I would still like some player movement on the power play, but I will take the puck movement. I also think again, I've been calling for this for years, but moving Jared McCann over to where he could be like a one-timer threat really opens a lot of things up, because if you're going to give him the puck, having him on his forehand and in a position where he can also deal it, like forgetting about just the one-timer opportunities, because we haven't really seen him try that yet on the power play, just having him in a position where he can kind of deal the puck and then other guys can work low on that other end of the ice has been big for them. But it's really, I feel like so much of why this team has been successful comes down to just being net front, right? We've seen several goals scored for the Kraken from guys being net front. You look at Maddie's power play goal, that's him in tight, no defense around him, able to make a move on the goalie. You look at the Mason Marchment goal, is kind of, it's off the transition, off the rush, but he's able to get into that good scoring uh area, low slot or slot area, to just piss off Jeff Merrick. And then you look at like Jared McCann's overtime winner, right? Again, in tight around the goaltender. And then you look at what other teams are not able to do. And with the exception of that first period against Anaheim, and maybe a little bit into the early bits of the second period against Anaheim, teams have not been able to establish a net front presence in front of Joey Daccord. And that has just been so key. I mean, that was so much of what their problem was last year, was that defense in and around the goaltender. Joey right now is able to not only see pucks, but when he stops them and there's a rebound, he is not always having to deal with rebound opportunities the way he was last year, where we were seeing him have to string together 4 or 5 saves in a row, all desperation type saves. He's just not having to do that right now because the Kraken defense is not allowing opposition teams to get to that area. They're not allowing them to get to those loose pucks net front. They are trying to clear them. And not only are they trying to clear them, they're clearing them out to the perimeter where they're a lot less dangerous, and then they're winning the board battles to gain possession of those and then breaking the puck out, right? So I think that that's been huge, is just the fact that the Kraken right now are winning battles in front of both net fronts, and that when you're a team that doesn't have a ton of skilled players, I mean, we talked about this so much last year, like that's kind of how you have to win, right? As much as you want to talk about larger structures and systems of defense and controlling the puck, the bottom line is if you take away their goalie's ability to see the puck and you give your goalie the ability to see the puck, things are going to work out for you, right? Certainly over the course of an 82 game sample size. So I think that right now, the fact that the Kraken are winning those battles at both ends of the ice is really big and really important. I mentioned the breakouts. RJ, we're on our third coach for the Seattle Kraken, right? I would argue that Lane Lambert has worked on, in practices and through training camp, breakouts the least of all of the coaches the Kraken have had. And yet, RJ, the Kraken are finally able to attack in transition like a modern day NHL team because they are getting just fantastic breakouts. And so much of it comes down to how Lane Lambert just kind of structures things, particularly in the defensive zone. He wants his center to play ultra deep and far back in the defensive zone, to the point where if the other team has the puck below the goal line, right, the puck's behind Joey in net, the center is often the number one guy for the Kraken going and pressuring that player, right? That's the center's responsibility. Lane Lambert's system wants to keep the defenseman in near tight with the goaltender. Again, that's partly why they've been able to win so many battles there. They're not kind of going with a hybrid zone system where those defensemen are having to really go off and chase the puck carrier and be that primary pressurer down low, leaving only one defenseman net front. Right now, we're seeing the center go and be that primary puck pressurer, and then both defensemen get to kind of hold down the fort net front. And I think that that's why we're seeing such a big change there. But what that means is both wingers play kind of at the half boards if the puck's down low, or up at the point if the puck's kind of higher up in the defensive zone, and it gives them the ability to get up the ice quickly, so that when the Kraken do force a turnover in their defensive zone, they're able to make an outlet pass to those wingers, and those wingers are able to go and pressure the other team and get the puck moved up the ice quickly. And that's just something that, again, as much as other coaches have tried it with this team, we haven't seen them be able to do consistently. But through 2 games here, we're seeing it multiple times each period, and that I think has also been a huge difference.
Definitely. And when you're breaking the puck out of the zone too, having the center that low to always be able to support in the D, knowing they can count on the center being
Hmm.
that low, I think it helps a lot with trusting when you can kind of throw a puck to an area and you're like, okay, center's going to be here to support. And if not, there's going to be a winger down low enough to come in and help out. And I think that's helping out a lot. It's the kind of thing that helps you get out of your zone quite a bit and helps you do that cleanly. You do sacrifice in terms of, okay, getting up the ice quickly and
Yeah.
generating some offense that way. That's the trade-off. That's why not every team does it and why some teams are a little more ambitious trying to get up the ice. But you know what? The way the Kraken are built, this makes a whole lot more sense for them. And you're seeing a guy like Matty Beniers absolutely thrive
Yeah.
in this sort of thing. You know, we know the defensive zone chops that he has, and he's just looked excellent. But you look at it from the opponent's perspective too. It is so hard to force another turnover or get on top of that as your opponent. And you know, too, if they're going back the other way reliably, you've got to get your numbers back. And we saw it in the third period against Vegas. Like both teams just had so many numbers back.
Mhm.
There was no way to really generate offense for either team. And so you kind of grinds to this stalemate. But you know what? That's going to benefit the team that maybe has a little bit less talent, the team that's not a Stanley Cup contender like Vegas is. That's going to benefit Seattle. And I want to add one more thing on the net front defense because I've just been so impressed by that.
Mhm.
One of the things I've seen and I've noticed a lot is that when Joey makes that first save, sometimes the puck's just hanging out right in front of him. And last year, that puck would instantly go to an opposing player's stick or they'd have the tap in, rebound, whatever. You're seeing that puck hang out for a couple seconds. There have been a few moments where I was like, it's there, it's there, it's there. But the reason is if you look out a little bit wider, it's that every Kraken defenseman and the forward back are taking away the bodies
Mhm.
of the other team's player in front, and they're just tying up the man. The puck's not going to score by itself. And so that puck is hanging there for a little bit before someone on the Kraken goes and takes it. But that's because they're focused on the player in the body. That's just something we haven't seen the last couple of years, where you'd always lose somebody in front. There'd be somebody who just didn't have a body on him, whose stick wasn't tied up. And you're really not seeing that as much anymore, which is so refreshing. I think Jamie Alexiak, I want to point him out specifically.
Mhm.
He's done a great job of that.
This system fits Jamie Alexiak and Adam Larson so much better than what we were seeing last year, right? Where it was forcing them to really have to go play to the corners, play behind the net, all of that kind of stuff. That's just not where their strengths lie. Their strengths lie in being able to be big, large physical presences, right? Like they are, and be able to tie up those bodies down front. And it's one of those things where as much as I could talk about the breakouts and break those down even more. I could talk about the way that they're cycling in the offensive zone and really keeping 5-on-5 puck possession and how that's helping limit chances going back the other way. It really does just come down to this team is playing focused, and that's it, right? Like they are focused in the moment, and they know where they're supposed to be, and they're actually going there, and they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that is just something that was lost under that last year under Dave Haxtell. That's something that was just really never there under Coach Dan last year, but it's there from, halfway through day one with this Kraken team. And I think that I think is the most impressive element of all this is just kind of how fast it all came together. It took about 30 minutes for the team to figure it all out and then just play flawlessly to their system after that. And that is kind of breaking me after last year. The reasoning we were getting from the coaching staff, from the players, from the front office was they just need time. They just need time to figure it out, or it's coming, it's coming. It's like, no, apparently it could have just been done in about a period and a half. Because that's how long it's taken Lane Lambert to get these guys to play concentrated and focused within a system.
Yeah, I mean, I remember at the start of last season, Coach Dan said something like, 20 games is kind of where you'd expect him to kind of have everything down and really get that blueprint ready. And we're seeing it 6 periods in, or really, it was like 3 periods in for the Kraken this year. And so I still have questions about whether they can maintain that sort of thing for how long, because it does take a lot of effort. It takes a lot of
Yep.
focus. It is draining. It is tiring. But if you get the results, I think that gives you a lot more energy. But yeah, it just makes me wonder. And I asked you this after the last game, like, what were they doing the last couple of years? Like, what was the idea there?
It's
And
what we
I
were
think it,
asking ourselves all the
yeah.
time.
And so, we were, I think, cautiously optimistic
Mhm.
this training camp about Lane Lambert, and we saw that he was saying the right things, that we liked the kind of things that he was implementing. But of course, we were skeptical. Like, okay, yeah, but is this group of players actually going to put it together on the ice consistently? So far, so good, and I think that's surprised the both of us a little bit.
Yeah, but I absolutely take it. Now, huge asterisk to all this, right? We haven't seen
Yeah.
this team play from behind yet. Kraken have not been trailing yet in a game. And I think that those are going to be the times where this system is really going to be tested because, like we mentioned, it's very defensively focused. It doesn't allow for a lot of, I don't want to say it doesn't allow for creativity in the offensive zone or for chances, but it does not promote a lot of great scoring chances, right? It's not promoting a huge transitional attack. It's not promoting a lot of those things that are going to help you score goals. So if this team does find themselves down, certainly if they're down by like two or more goals, if it's a multi-goal deficit, I'm kind of interested to see how things change up, right? Like, what does Lane Lambert have for those moments? But certainly, if the Kraken are able to score first or keep games scoreless for a while and then try to win on special teams, because that's the other thing about this, right? You want to win on special teams. This team is playing unbelievably disciplined hockey right now, which they need to because if they're going to try to grind everything to a halt at 5-on-5, you need to then be able to take advantage of things on special teams. I think that that is the plan this year. Again, you're 20% on the power play at the moment. If you can keep that up for the course of a season, that will definitely help you win games. But that also relies on you not putting the other team up with the man advantage. And right now, the Kraken are doing a really good job of that as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I think that are kind of holding this together that are going to have to continue to hold this together. And you mentioned the power play, not taking penalties, staying out of the box. That's huge. I mean, I think if you give that Vegas power play another one or two opportunities in the last game, they probably score on one of them because they're just so good. And that's, you could say that about a lot of good teams. The goaltending, I do wonder what this looks like without Joey Decord in net. We'll see. I do think certainly in that Anaheim game, if you have either Matt Murray or Philip Grubauer in net, the Ducks probably score 2 or 3 goals in the first period, and it's a
Yeah.
different looking game. So you can't afford to have an off period like that without Joey in net. So we'll see what that looks like eventually. I mean, I think he's going to play a lot of games.
Yeah.
So we probably won't see too much of it. Yeah, so it was the penalties, it was the goaltending, and then yeah, trailing. Like this is not a team that is built to play from behind. They are built to have a lead early and hold it. And so far they've been able to kind of do that. But we'll see what it looks like when they trail. I would just say don't expect the level of multi-goal comebacks that we
Mhm.
saw last season. That was a different type of team. They played differently. And I do think it was part of the trade-off of how bad they were defensively
Oh, yeah.
was the ability to have those comebacks. So I think you're probably getting rid of that special ability, but it's worth it as you can see from the defensive side of things.
Yeah, because one of the things we haven't seen that we saw during the preseason and we saw during training camp, but we haven't really seen it in the game yet, RJ, and that's the defensemen really step up, right? Have some aggressive pinches in the offensive zone or start going lower in the offensive zone. We saw that a lot in the preseason. We have not seen that so far in the regular season, and I think that that's because they haven't needed to, really, right? Like the focus has been on not allowing the other team to score. If the Kraken find themselves down by one, I wonder if we start seeing more freedom out there for guys like Vince Dunn, Brandon Montour to kind of roam around the offensive zone a little bit more and try to create chances that way and pressure other teams' defenses. But we'll see. We'll see. One thing that this very structured, focused game has meant, though, RJ, is we're not seeing a lot of the young guys in the lineup, right? Because this is such a again, focus and structured system. Lane Lambert is choosing to run with veterans. And look, that makes sense, right? Especially early on in the season, you want this to go, you want this system to work and you want it to be executed to the best of its abilities. And generally, having veteran players out there and performing the most is going to mean that that happens. And it's important to get the season started off right, build a lot of positive momentum, all of those things. But it definitely has meant that guys like Shane Wright, Yanni Newman, Berkeley Catton, we are seeing either little of them, less and less of them as game goes on, or in Berkeley Catton's case, just not at all as these games are going. And so I kind of want to talk to you here, RJ. You know, Shane Wright ice time was a huge deal for you last year. How are you feeling right now after 2 games when he's averaging 14.39, which feels a lot like last year?
It does. And so on that front specifically, I'm not very encouraged. Like we talked about, I love that they have an identity, love all that stuff, but I think it's important to understand that there is a trade-off to development that I think that comes with that. And that the longer this goes on, and I think really the more success that they have with it, it is going to hurt some of the young players' long-term development. And I think we are seeing that a little bit with Shane right here, where you look at the Vegas game, the Ducks game, 15:45, okay, and he was, that line at 5-on-5 was playing as kind of the second line, even though the top nine were all kind of playing similar amounts of minutes. But in the Vegas game, there was kind of a clear switch. Lane Lambert switched up the wingers and basically made Chandler Stevenson pretty clear 2C, with Matty Beniers as the 1C. And so Shane Wright, only 13:33 of ice time, clearly playing as the third line center and really in more of a supporting role. That's not the kind of thing I was hoping to see for him this season. Now, in a game against Vegas like that, maybe you have to change things up and it'll be a different story against some teams like on this road trip, Montreal, Ottawa. I think you can afford to give Shane Wright a bigger role there. We'll see if they do, but it has left me with some worries there because, as you've said, Dylan, many times, it's kind of the put up or shut up year for Shane Wright. Historically, based on the way that these players develop, that age 22 season is really important. And we just haven't really seen that jump from Shane yet. And I think the most concerning thing to me is maybe just the mentality. And you pointed this out to me before we started recording. He's one of 3 Kraken players this season without a single shot on goal. It's him, Yanni Newman, and Ty Cartier. And among those, what did you say? There's only 2 or 3 shot attempts. He's really just not throwing the puck on net at all.
Right. And that is odd to me because it felt like during the preseason, okay, he can really flourish in this system. He understands it. He can be aggressive in the offensive zone, and we might finally see some of that killer instinct, that aggressive mentality from Shane that he's really lacked a lot in his more recent career. And we are not seeing that at all on game days right now. We are not seeing a player that looks like he wants to try to take charge of the game, that he wants to take charge of what's happening out there on the ice. We're just not seeing that. We're seeing somebody who looks very focused on making sure he's in the right spots to make, the system work around him. And that is important. And normally that would be a huge area of emphasis for a young player, is kind of almost reeling them back in from being too wild or breaking the system too much, chasing opportunities, things like that. That's normally what you're doing as a coaching staff, is you're trying to bring those guys back in and get them to play more structured. Same issue that we kind of had last year with Shane, same issue that he kind of had in CV. Really, if you go all the way back to his draft year in the OHL, same issue there. Shane Wright wants to play to the system and the structure. And all coaches forever are going to be preaching that system and structure, meaning two-way game, focus on defense, make sure you're not giving up spots, all of that stuff. And that's what Shane Wright really focuses on. And look, that's fine, and that is good to have, and that's certainly something that the elite centermen have in the National Hockey League. Like, that is something that you do need to be if you want to be a top 6 center in the National Hockey League. Certainly a top 6 center on a good team. You need to be able to play two-way. You need to understand those elements of the game. You need to be able to execute upon them. But the other thing that those centermen have is they go out there and they try to score and they try to make things happen in the offensive zone. And we're just not seeing that from Shane Wright right now at all. We're seeing the good defense. We're seeing him fit the system, but we are just not seeing him take charge. 3 total shot attempts, none of them making it on net, is a little concerning for me, because I really wanted this year Shane to take that next step forward, for him to try to get aggressive, for him to be in a system that really suits a lot of his natural abilities already, and for him to kind of shut his brain off for that stuff. Just play on instinct. You're going to be playing to the system if you play on instinct, if you're Shane Wright. And then focus his efforts on the offensive zone. And again, it's 2-game sample size. Maybe we'll see that later. Maybe Shane Wright is the key to when they're down a couple goals, right? Maybe that's kind of how this is going to work, is when they're down a goal or two, Lane Lambert's going to turn to Shane and be like, dude, you have one of the highest potential upsides offensively of anyone on this team. Go out there and try to make something happen. It's very possible that that is the case. I'm withholding judgment until we see a little bit more. But through 2 games, I did want to see Shane kind of take charge a little bit more. Something we talked a lot about through the preseason and training camp, and unfortunately just not just haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, we haven't. It's just something to keep an eye on over the next few games. Like, I want to reiterate, it's only 2 games in, and I think for a lot of this, you could we're reserving ultimate judgment here, but just some concerning things we're seeing. But hopefully, this road trip kind of helps unlock him. I mean, the next game against Montreal, that's a good opponent to maybe have a little breakout against. Scored his first career goal against him. That'd be nice.
Yeah, and again, it's not even like a Lane Lambert issue for me right now. Like it's not I'm not too focused on the ice time right now because like I get it. Some of those the way those games were going, it kind of made sense for you to maybe not use Shane in Vegas the second game under this coach, right? Like
And
that
it
makes
gives
sense
you
to
the
me.
best chance to win. And I think
Right.
that's something that's worth saying right now and repeating because I know we've said it in the past, but like Lane Lambert is an NHL head coach. An NHL head coach, doesn't matter who it is, he's going to distribute ice time and make the lineup and whatever in the way that he feels gives his team the best opportunity to win on a given night. That's how NHL head coaches operate. Unless they're explicitly told from above to do something differently, that is just what they're going to do all the time. And I don't disagree. I think in that Vegas game, if I'm just trying to win that one game in isolation, I'm probably treating it the same way that Lane Lambert does.
Yeah, well, I might not just because I think Shane's probably better defensively than Chandler Stevenson. But
Well, yeah.
I just I don't want it to like I don't want to linger on this point too long or anything like that. I'm just saying I understand right now why a coach looking at Shane Wright would not necessarily bump him up to full 2C minutes where we're seeing 18 minutes a night out of him. Because until Shane Wright proves to me that he wants to go out there and he wants to try to force the issue and he wants to play aggressively and he wants to try to score and he wants to try to be the best player on the ice when he's out there, I don't know how you can give him those minutes. And so I think it's a little bit different this year under Lane than it was, say, the second half of last year, where the season was over and you could give Shane those minutes and try to build his confidence and everything. Right now, early season, it makes no sense to do that with Shane right now, right? Like you got to be focused on winning. Winning and building that culture is so much more important than just getting Shane Wright as a singular player kind of going right now. And his confidence will rise as the team wins too, right? Like that is part of it. But I want to stress that I do think that right now it's more of a Shane Wright thing than it is a coaching thing. And I think that the only person holding Shane Wright back at this moment is Shane Wright, because I do feel like Lane Lambert, RJ, through these first 2 games, is rewarding players that are playing well. Right? Like if you are
He is.
playing well, he has no problem moving you up up in the lineup and giving you a couple more minutes throughout the course of that game. And so I think it's on Shane Wright to kind of prove that he can go out there and be that guy right now, because I think once he does, Lane Lambert will absolutely give him the minutes he then deserves. I just don't know that Shane Wright kind of deserves those minutes right now. The other player we haven't seen a ton is, of course, Yanni Newman playing on the fourth line, basically playing 2 periods of hockey at the moment, with the Kraken kind of defending leads, not using him a lot in the third periods, averaging only 8:15 of ice time so far. This kind of makes sense to me. Like, again, I was always down with the idea of Yanni Newman playing on the fourth line, RJ, to start the season. I was fine with that as long as you then featured him on the power play. I think that that's where he needs to be. Certainly on that second unit. That second unit power play looks like it's not doing anything right now. Right, I feel like if you plug Yanni Newman in there, you at least have some sort of threat on it. But that's a different conversation, I guess. Um, but I understand this is normal for a guy like this, right? Second round pick, comes over from Europe, plays a year in the AHL, comes in, joins the NHL, starts off on the fourth line, has to learn the intricacies of forecheck, has to learn the intricacies of backcheck, particularly if you're stuck on a team that is going to be an underdog team on most nights and needs to play a structured system in order to win. This is the blueprint. Like, this is what any NHL team is going to do with a kid like Yanni Newman. So I don't totally hate that aspect of it. It's strictly that I have issues that he's not on one of the power play units.
Yeah, I think that's the area where I can't find a good reason for it, because I do think he is one of the team's 8 best power play forwards in that situation. Nobody else really has that kind of one-timer shot that can add to a unit like that. And so I was you talked me into being okay with fourth line plus power play role for Yanni Newman. But if he's not getting the power play ice time, he's just playing on the fourth line. He's getting about 8 minutes a night, and he's not doing a whole lot with that. I don't think he's looked all that great on the fourth line. And this goes back to the Lambert point I made too, where I wouldn't bump him up the lineup if I'm just trying to win games right now. I don't think he's shown you
Yeah.
anything to show that he should move up the lineup. I get that, but I think this is where you're making the biggest trade-off as far as development versus winning right now. And I think this isn't helping Yanni Newman. I think at this point, you might as well send him down to CV. If he's going to be playing, I think playing top line minutes in CV is going to be better for him for whatever amount of time that you want to do that than playing him 8 minutes a night on the fourth line in Seattle and not getting any power play time. The power play, if he gets power play time, that changes the equation. But right now, I mean, I don't know, why is he up here?
Because he needs to learn an NHL style game, right? Like, I do think there is a point in time for guys that are not top 10 picks. And for the Kraken, largely, we've only ever had to talk about development cycles for top 10 picks. They are on a different development track than every other player who is a prospect. And I think that for guys like Yanni Newman, particularly for a guy like Yanni Newman who has needed to work so much on his skating and who did, grow up playing in Europe, and that's the professional leagues that he was playing in before he came over here, were the European leagues. He does need to understand forward and back checking in North America and what that entails, and he needs to get reps against NHL opponents to do that. If Yanni Newman goes back to CV, he is just going to be able to play his own singular game again. He's going to get away with it because he is that much better than all the guys down there. He's going to score 25 to 30 goals, and you're not actually developing him, right? Like, what, he needs to work on his shot? No, he doesn't, right? Like that's the thing. There is more to development than just ice time, and I think that with the vast majority of players, again, top 10 picks, guys like Matty Beniers, Shane Wright, Berkeley Catton, they're a different animal because of how good they are and what you're trying to turn them into. Yanni Newman's just trying to be turned into a top 6 winger, right? If you're going to be a top 6 winger that's going to command 20 minutes of ice time in the National Hockey League, you have to know how to forecheck, back check in the National Hockey League. That is what he is being focused on right now, is learning those elements. You can see it out there. He's actively thinking about it when he's in the offensive zone. He's thinking about it when he's in the defensive zone. That's why he has 0 shots on goal and only 1 shot attempt through his 2 games, is because he is trying to learn the rest of the game. I do think that is important. I think that is a necessary step for a player like Yanni Newman. This is just the way things work in the National Hockey League. Most guys that are not top 10 picks do not get thrust into top 6 roles, right? That are not top 10 picks do not get thrust into top 6 roles once they start their NHL career just because they were good in the minors, right? Like, that's just not how it works, because there's so much more to the game. And I think that's just where we're at with Yanni Newman. So again, I don't really have an issue with the ice time. I don't have an issue with the role. I also think that, again, winning cures everything, and I would much rather have this organization turned into a winning organization, an organization people want to be a part of right now, rather than a team that is just perpetually developing players like Anaheim has for the last 4 years, right? Anaheim's a great example of this. They have thrust all those players into top 6 roles. They have not figured out how to win. They've not figured out how to close out games. They have not figured out how to grind through adversity because the young players on their own just don't learn those lessons. So I don't have an issue with this. I think that this is what we should expect for the next couple of years as more and more of these young players kind of graduate from CV. This is just what NHL development looks like for guys that are not Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, Berkeley Catton. So I don't know. I'm okay with it. Again, I think he should be on the power play strictly because he's that good. His shot is that good. That's a different story. But for the rest of it, I think this is just how this is how they start their careers.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I don't have an issue with fourth line plus power play, I guess. And so we're splitting hairs here, and maybe it's also me thinking like more in my preseason mindset, where I'm like, look, this team on paper still is like projected to be bottom 4 in the league over the course of the season, and maybe we need to adjust that a little bit now. But if that's the case, no excuse not to give him a try, at least, in a top 6 role, and kind of see what he can do, because you have the vets to put around him. It's not like you're just having all the young players all playing together and not learning anything like in Anaheim. You have some support you can give him, but maybe that's a conversation to have in December, January, where we kind of know what this team is or what it isn't.
Right. Yeah, again, like, it's the Shane Wright thing from last year. Like, once you're out of it, certainly post-trade deadline, there's no excuse not to do stuff.
Yeah, it is inexcusable.
Like,
maybe that's kind of ruined me there with the Shane Wright
Yeah.
thing, because I'm just like, I'm still kind of mad about that, because you had nothing to lose and it was just inexcusable not to give him the opportunity. But I need to dial that back for the start of the season. We're at the start of the season. We're at game 2, not game 62.
Right. So I do think there's an element of that at play here, is that things are different. And like I said, players in Yanni's role and really what Yanni projects to be is he's just in a different spot than most others. Is Lane going to be tougher on him and really drive home for and back checking maybe a little bit longer than some coaches around the league? Yeah, probably, because he's a real true X's and O's execution kind of guy. Again, that's better for this team as a whole, but it probably means the prospects might lag a tiny bit because he's going to demand perfection from them. But on the flip side, RJ, right, to end this conversation on young guys on a little bit of a high before we move on, Ryan Winterton is a perfect example of this, right? Ryan Winterton, he is executing on those things. He did pick up that stuff and that system during training camp, and he is being rewarded with ice time. He's getting nearly 14 minutes of ice time so far through 2 games. We're seeing him moved around the lineup based on his play. I think Ryan Winterton's a good example of how this can work under Coach Lane Lambert, where if you show up and you do your job and you execute on it well and you force the issue, he's going to give you those additional minutes. Because Ryan Winterton getting 14 minutes of ice time, if you had told us that even after the good preseason he was having, I'm not sure I would have believed you.
No, and to see him, I'm even in the lineup in the top 9 to start the season. We're like, okay, well, this probably isn't going to last for too long, but he's done everything he possibly can to make that last. I mean, short of that one penalty against Vegas, and oh man, he felt so bad about that
He
too.
did.
You could see it, and he was just battling. Like, I don't even, I don't blame him too much for that. But he's done so many of the little things over these first couple games, and I want to point to a moment. Again, I wish I could just show everybody the video as I'm talking about this, but there was a play where the Golden Knights are bringing it up through the neutral zone, and Winterton kind of steps up at center ice to go and pressure the player who's coming in with the puck. Player passes it off, and so Winterton has to then kind of turn around and try and get back into the D zone. And it's a 3-on-2 developing for Vegas. I think Shea Theodore is the trailer, and Winterton skates like full speed from a full stop, just gets his legs moving, puts his stick out, and takes away the passing option on the 3-on-2. And it forces the player with the puck to just shoot it right into Joey's chest, and you get a stoppage. And it's a total nothing play. You'd never notice it watching the game. But Winterton taking away that pass prevented something that could have been potentially a great scoring chance, a goal, or something that could turn the game on its head. And that's the kind of little things, the work that players are putting in that they weren't doing last season. And so many times last season, you would see a player not put in the effort like that to get back. 3-on-2 develops, they hit the trailer, and that shot either scores or rebound goes in, whatever it is. We saw so many goals against the Kraken that looked just like that last season. You don't notice it when it's not happening, but you really notice it when it does, and it messes up your team late in the game. So those are the kind of things that I'm sure Lane Lambert's seeing. They're the kind of things that I'm noticing, and added up with him and all the other players, it's the difference between losing these games and winning them. So Winterton, he's putting in that effort. I think he's showing the veterans too. Like, I think when you see a young guy out there doing those kinds of things, because it is thankless, it's not glamorous. Nobody's going to point out that play
except us.
But except us, I guess we'll point out that play. So, but it's not glamorous, but like the other players do see that. Like the trained eye sees that, and if you're a vet, man, he's putting in the work to do that sort of thing. I better make sure the next time I go out on the ice for my shift that I'm doing that, because I can't be the guy that messes this up when the young guy's, doing what he's doing.
Right. I don't think that it's an accident that against Anaheim he had 12:02 ice time, and then against Vegas, a better opponent that the team was more focused on trying to beat and trying to execute their game plan against, he had 15:49. Like that, I think, tells you everything you need to know about how Coach Lane Lambert feels about a guy like Ryan Winterton and the effort that Ryan Winterton's putting in right now. And so again, to guys like Yanni, well, again, Yanni Newman needs to learn a lot still, but to a guy like Shane Wright, go out there and force the issue. Ryan Winterton's forcing the issue. He's getting rewarded for it. And so I think that it's one of those things where, yeah, again, here early on in the season, I'm not going to blame it all on Coach Lane Lambert. I think some of it is just the guys needing to get comfortable and go out there and earn their spots the way Ryan Winterton is. We've talked a lot about kind of how this team has looked. We've talked about the young guys now, RJ. We can kind of look at everything. And really the big question comes around, which is how much do we read into 2 games? How good do we really think they are? And do we, as you talked about earlier, need to adjust expectations for the rest of the season?
It's a very good question. And I think you have to be wary about overreacting to 2 games, no matter which team you're talking about. And I think we should still be careful about that. But I guess as far as my range of potential outcomes and what I thought this team could be going into the season, I think big picture that hasn't changed. Where I think their ceiling is last year's Calgary Flames, and I think you
Mhm.
probably brought that comparison up first. So I want to give you credit for it, but their ceiling is last season's Calgary Flames because if they do this sort of thing and they play this way, they look a lot like last season's Flames, where they're maybe a little bit low on the skill side of things, but they're going to work hard. They're going to get good goaltending. They're going to take advantage of their spots. And that Flames team put up 96 points. I think that's kind of the ceiling of what this team can be. If you give, well, maybe not 82 games because no team can give 82 games of this effort, but if you do it consistently, roughly over the course of a season, that's what this team can be. I think their floor is still, maybe a little less than last season, just based on the talent amassed. If injuries hit, if Joey gets hurt, if some of the things that just can't afford to go wrong, that's where this team can still end up. But I think I have adjusted a little bit. I think when we pick the games individually for the course of the whole season, I had them starting very strong. I had them starting like 16-4 or something, and then before it leveled out. But ultimately, I think it was just a little better than last year is where I thought they could be. I've I've bumped that up just a little bit because I really like what I'm seeing after 2 games. I need to see more of it, but I'm starting to think, okay, this is a team that probably isn't going to be in the running for, say, Gavin McKenna this year. Whereas before, that was kind of what I defaulted to.
Right. I think if they end up with Gavin McKenna, it's because they, the balls fell the right way, right, on lottery
Yeah.
day. Yeah, last year's Calgary Flames team, I mean, even when I made that comparison, I didn't think it was going to look so much like last year's Calgary team, but boy, does it. You look at last year's Calgary team, 29th in the league in goals for, but 15th in goals against. And I think the Kraken can probably, I don't think they're necessarily, they're going to be bottom five in goals for. That I feel pretty
They are.
safe about. But I think they could even be a little bit higher than Calgary was last year at 15th in goals against. Like I think they could start pushing for a top 10 spot there because Joey is that good, and I think they're going to use him that much. And frankly, the Kraken blue line is better than last year's Calgary Flames blue line, and so I trust in them being able to play to this system a little bit better than last year's Flames team. So, but I think that that's very much the blueprint where you're looking at no real star player is gonna, go out there and pop off offensively. You look at the guys leading the way last year for the Flames, Jonathan Huberdeau, Nazem Kadri, both in the 60s in terms of points. I think that that's a reasonable assumption for somebody on the Kraken. That's really what Jared McCann has been giving you these last couple of years, but maybe Maddie's able to join him this year or something like that. And you look at not just the goals for and goals against kind of range for the team, but then you look at like power play percentage and penalty kill. And I think that this is again kind of something that we could see. Last year's Flames team, 21% on the power play. If the Kraken could get 21% on the power play, yeah, they're going to be in the conversation deep into the season. Like post trade deadline, they're going to be in the conversation. If they get that level of power play, they stay as disciplined as they are, and they continue to go out there and execute this system. So I think that last year's Flames team is very much what the Kraken are, internally probably should be shooting for higher than that. But I think realistically, that's like what they're on pace for right now. If they play all 82 the way they played these first two, I think that's what we really see from them over the course of the year. And again, after the years that we've had, obviously playoffs would be great, all of that kind of stuff. But after these last 2 years that you've had, if you can just kind of get back on track there and get the vibes right, get the culture right, and have all that positive momentum going into then that next off season where you have a ton of cap space and all of those things, I think that'll just mean so much to the young guys on the team and the guys that are going to be carrying forward with the team. And it's going to mean a lot to incoming free agents, whatever young players are going to start working into the system, all of that kind of stuff, because it gives you credibility and immediate buy-in from anybody that's going to join this team if you can put up a good season like that and you can get to 90 plus points. So I think that that's I I don't know about the expectation, RJ. I think if they continue to play the way they played through these two games, that's the expectation kind of for me. But I think for the most part, my expectation is to be kind of, aiming for that and just to put in the effort each and every night, right? Whether or not you're able to totally execute it, obviously mistakes are going to happen. Nobody plays mistake free, but just put in the effort that you've put in through the second half of the Ducks game and through all of that Vegas game, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, and that's I guess really where my expectations were for this season. I guess that hasn't changed. Is just put in the effort, play focused, play to the best of your abilities. You're not going to win every night, certainly not with the roster you have. But if you can do that, I think the both of us are going to be happy with it. And I think the fans are going to be happy with it.
Yes.
And so far, so good through two games. We'll see how long they can continue that, but I'm happy, and it's certainly been a fun two games to go to and to watch, and so I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah. And again, I think they will give that effort because I think they're motivated, and winning helps a lot. And the fact that you've been rewarded with 4 points through these two games is huge. It's tough going on the road here. We'll see kind of how things, go there. But I think the other thing about this, and this is where Coach Lane Lambert coming in, I think helps, is what we talked about earlier with the ice time, right? He's rewarding the guys that are giving effort. He's promoting giving that effort internally. You don't give that effort, you get moved down the lineup. You give that effort, you get moved up the lineup. That kind of accountability, certainly 2 games into a season, RJ, we have not seen before from a Kraken head coach. And so I think that that's really important. And that's something that I don't see why he wouldn't continue to do that. And I think that that helps promote that effort longer and through more of the season, and it'll help through whatever losing streaks come, all of that stuff that naturally occurs during the course of a season. I think Lane Lambert having that mentality and holding everybody to that standard is going to really help out this team in a way that we didn't always see in the past.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it too. I think look, this team's going to face adversity at some point. Every single team does through every single season of hockey. It just happens. And that's the biggest thing that I haven't seen yet is I need to see this team face adversity and get through it and get to the other side. And of course, they haven't had that chance yet because everything's gone right for them. But it's going to happen to them. And I think that accountability is going to be huge. And on the flip side, I think he's willing to give players more ice time when they earn it. I would believe he'd be the kind of coach that might scratch a veteran when they haven't been playing well enough to earn that ice time in a way that, Dan Bilesma didn't do a whole lot and Dave Haxtell never did, it seemed like. So I trust that he's going to be willing to do that sort of thing. And I think that's the kind of thing that's going to help stop some of the skids that, the losing streaks that will inevitably happen to every team over the course of a season. Hopefully that kind of thing helps. So I'm really believing in Lane Lambert so far
I
here.
know.
That's the biggest thing. Like we were cautiously optimistic going to the season based on what we'd seen in training camp, and we've been given more reasons to believe now.
Right. For the first time, it feels like we have a coach whose sole focus is on winning, and that all of the decision he makes is based around winning. Like that's kind of it, right? And again, I think that that's positive. I think that's exactly what this team needed, and I'm happy that it's being received as well as it is by the team, and they're able to again kind of bookend the whole conversation that we started at the beginning of the podcast. They're actually going out there and doing that, right? They're actually going out there and they're winning. And that I think is really cool to see. Just some other like interesting tidbits. It's too early in the season, I think, for most like analytics. 2 game sample size is a 2 game sample size. But I'm encouraged by how faceoffs are being handled by this team. I think one of the big things I've noticed there is not just like the improved numbers for a lot of guys. And again, we'll see how this holds. Matty Beniers being at 58%, Chandler Stevenson being at 58%, all that stuff. What I've been intrigued by, RJ, is all of the faceoff opportunities for the most part that we see. Kraken are not really trying to win clean. Right? The center is crashing into the other center. They're trying to out leverage them physically, and then they're starting to use their stick. Or in some cases, and I've really noticed this with Matty Beniers, and I'd love to kind of see, I haven't really seen him practice the faceoffs too much in practice, but I'd love to see who he's been working with and maybe who's giving him this idea. But Matty Beniers is basically on the draw, using his stick just to take away the other center's stick and then crash into him and try to out leverage him, and then just try to gain body position and then use his stick to swipe away and win the face-off. And I think that that's a solid thing. I mean, obviously the numbers are good so far, but I do think that like that's the kind of it just goes to show again, there's like a different mentality around this group and maybe a little bit different and better focus on things like a face off, right? Because that's like kind of one of those next level strategies that a team or a good centerman will employ that we haven't seen from a guy like Matty Beniers before.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too, because you didn't get the chance to be down there for media after the first game because you were running post game.
Yeah.
But one of the things Coach Lambert was asked what areas they could improve after that game, and the first thing he said was plays off of face-offs. You know,
Mhm.
how we react to a face-off being won or lost, what the guys who aren't taking the face-off are doing, and so that's something that I was looking out for in the Vegas game, and I thought they did a much better job. And so it's just a generally encouraging thing to see. Okay, that's an area he pointed that they want to improve, and they improved it the very next game. And second also is that we see it in camp. They announced it to us too when talking about the coaching roles. Jess Campbell is kind of taking charge of faceoffs
Yeah.
this year, and that's something that she wasn't in charge of last year, I don't think. And so that's kind of been a new role for her, and so it's one of those areas I see her working with the players on that. So I don't know if that goes down to just taking the face-offs, but I would imagine that would also include, the plays off the face-offs and strategy around that. It's a whole thing. As Hackstall has told us, as Bilesma told us, as I'm sure Lambert would tell us, it's not just about the puck being dropped and the two centers and what they do. It's
Mhm.
about what all five guys on the ice do at the drop and afterward.
Yeah. So, and those are the kinds of things that I do give, especially with the new coach and everything, a little bit more of a grace period, right? Like those are the
Oh
things
yeah.
that I expect to take 10 or 15 games to start coming together because when you're a new coach, you're coming in, you have training camp, all of that kind of stuff. You are so focused on the larger systems, right? Your 5-on-5 system, because that's where 90+% of the game is going to be played, takes precedent over the intricacies of face-off plays and things like that. But I do trust that this coaching staff's going to have those things implemented pretty fast, like you're alluding to there. I know we're already at the hour mark here, but I do feel like we should just talk a little bit about how some of the veterans are playing because we spent so much time on the young guys, RJ, and I'm assuming everybody's going to be okay with more content from us. So maybe I'm assuming too much. Let me know. But I want to talk quickly about the blue line. We talked about how well they're playing defensively, but Vince Dunn and Brandon Montour already in midseason form as far as, taking those shots from the blue line, being just all around players, particularly Brandon Montour, the two-way game, because he, I think, is kind of filling in almost at times when his centerman in the defensive zone, like I talked about earlier, is having to play really deep and then they get that breakout. Brandon Montour is like, hey man, don't worry. I'll go and join that rush and I'll play the role of the center and I'll kind of be that third person attacking. And that's been a ton of fun to watch. And then Vince Dunn, you can just tell RJ has been waiting. He's been waiting to have net front traffic for his shot to start sneaking through and get to the net. And obviously he opens up the season with that first goal for the Kraken. But I think it's been really interesting to see that he's finding different areas to shoot the puck from, right? He's not shooting from near the boards, he's not shooting from center in the offensive zone. He's walking around and he's really utilizing that traffic that now exists net front to find the right angle to try to get his shot through. And I think that that's something where we could see a pretty healthy goal total from him at the end of the year as that continues.
Yeah, and that's something he talked about at the end of last season as an area he wanted to improve on. He said he wanted to shoot the puck more and kind of work the blue line a little bit more too. It felt like he was hesitating and maybe forcing some shots from areas where they shouldn't be. And so that's clearly something he's worked on the offseason. And none of it works without traffic though. It's all that net front traffic, but when he sees it, he will go for it. So I'm sure Dunn's quite happy with that. Yeah, Montour's just doing his thing in the transition game. Especially we talked about the trade-offs, right? Where you're having everyone play so deep and it's hard to get up the ice quickly to take advantage of quick, fast break type situations. Montour's helping do that quite a bit in a way that maybe the setters, I don't want to say they don't want to, but they probably can't.
Yes. It does feel more like a can't than a won't
Yeah.
issue for most of them. Yeah. But again, like that's the kind of thing where the Lane Lambert system can work on its own without a guy like Brandon Montour who's capable of doing that, but it's able to work a lot better when you have a guy like Brandon Montour who's able to jump up and join those transitions and help the team on attack. So just wanted to kind of shout out those guys. We already talked about like Lars and Alexiak really upping their play because they get to play a little bit closer to the net and a little bit more man-to-man and physical. Up front, who's impressed you from the veteran group? Because I feel like a lot of them have stepped up to start this year.
Yeah, they really have. I mean, I think we got to talk about the first line. McCann, Beniers, and Eberle back together.
Mhm.
The gang's all back together. And I mean, they are really impressive. They've been a proper first line for this team. And we saw them even go toe to toe with the Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner line for Vegas and control a lot of possession, especially late in the game. And so that's something this team was definitely going to need. I know we said we were concerned about Matty Beniers early in training camp. That concern is gone for me.
Mhm.
I have none left. He is doing his thing. He's as advertised. And just the three of them together, the chemistry is just awesome.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it almost feels like, wait, why did we break them up? Right? Like why were they not playing together this whole time? Because they just so naturally know where each other are going to be out there on the ice. What's really impressive for me is that it is all three of them having chemistry together through Matty Beniers, right? Like it looks like a proper line because I look at Jordan Eberle and his chemistry with Matty Beniers when it comes to forechecking, right? Whether it's coming in off of a dump and chase or it's coming in off of a controlled zone entry. Matty Beniers and Jordan Eberle know exactly how to work off of each other when it comes to forechecking and establishing puck control and starting the cycle. Particularly Jordan Eberle. Like I do think this is more on Jordan Eberle reading what Matty's doing and then reacting and being in the right spot than it's Matty working with Jordan Eberle. But I think that it's been really impressive to watch that last game in that Vegas game. I try to dial into Jordan Eberle in the offensive zone, and so much of it is him having his head up, seeing what his centerman is doing, and then adjusting based on that to either go behind the net or net front as Matty is carrying the puck along the boards on the perimeter. If you watch that, Jordan Eberle is really watching Matty, and like he must have a couple tells or something because Jordan Eberle always knew when he needed to break low or versus when he needed to break high to be that outlet and that pressure release for Matty once the defense started closing in on him. So that was really impressive there. And then Jared McCann and Matty have this chemistry where Jared McCann just knows where to get open, but in a place where Matty's going to see him and Matty's going to be able to find him with the puck. And I think that that's really good. And this one it does feel a little bit more Matty too, where Matty Beniers is like, look, this is where I want to be sending pucks. And Jared McCann is starting to go there. And unlike in past seasons, I feel like it's more net front than it was before, right? Like we're seeing Jared McCann step up, be a little bit more net front for those perimeter passes from Matty Beniers than we were in years past. And so far, I feel like it's working and it's helped him be more dangerous. Obviously, both Jared McCann goals that we've seen this year have been him pretty in tight against the goaltender there when he receives the puck and then when he's able to score. So I want to continue to see that, but it feels like Matty Beniers working with both those guys and both those guys working with Matty Beniers just for so many reasons is getting the job done for the Kraken. And they've definitely been, I think, the most dangerous line offensively for the team. The numbers would certainly say so. But I think other guys are doing well as well. Jaden Schwartz is obviously playing well in this system. We've talked a couple times about Eli Tolvanen and his net front presence on that Vince Dunn goal, but I think Eli Tolvanen as a player who has never been shy physically, being able to kind of use his body and go out there and try to screen net front has been a big deal for him. It would not surprise me, RJ, if we see the two of them kind of rotate centers a little bit just based on game situations, but I feel like the two of those guys have been pretty, I don't want to say dangerous from the wing because they haven't really generated a lot of opportunities themselves. I mean, Tolvanen only has 3 shots, Jaden Schwartz only has 1, but it does feel like they're the kinds of pieces that can then make the rest of the line around them work.
Yeah, and it seems like that's what Lambert's gone with early on too, because he kept those two together, Schwartz and Tolvanen, and just switched up the center, made that their second line later on in the Vegas game, and so you could tell he kind of trusts those two. And yeah, Tolvanen was someone I was certainly going to bring up if you didn't, because yes, he had the net front presence on that opening goal, but he's had that net front presence so many times. He's always there in the offensive zone, and so I'm surprised it hasn't led to even more goals. It certainly will as the season goes on, but I've loved his game's so well rounded. when he came to the Kraken, he had that shot that everyone talked about, but he's really become a great 200-foot player and just being established at the front of the net in the offensive zone. Love that. Leads the team in hits with 9 also. No surprise. He's not afraid to get physically involved. And that's just something that a coach like Lane Lambert is going to love. I think the fit there is going to be perfect.
Yeah, I do too. So, and everybody else, I mean, really no complaints from the forward group to start the season. Like, again, I know there might be some people out there looking at their point totals and looking at offensive chances and stuff and maybe a little disappointed from that. But again, I don't know, like the system's not going to give them a ton of opportunities for those things. Like that's not the objective when they're out there all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, certain things like with the system, we've covered, like, Yanni Newman still finding his way. Ty Karche's not going to put up a ton of points, but he's doing his thing. I won't mention any other, any centers or anything. Actually, I've liked Freddie Gaudreau. I've liked Freddie Gaudreau early on.
I've liked Freddie Gaudreau too. Yes, it feels a little too early to talk about the other center involved in all of this. Yeah. There will be time later in the year, but yeah, want to keep things positive. And things should be positive, RJ, because they're winning, and winning means your problems kind of go away.
It does. Winning cures all. Right. And through 2 games, I think we're all feeling pretty darn good about this team.
Yeah. So I think, is there anything else you want to talk about before we close it out?
Let's see. I mean, just the Humpy was at the last game. Is he the Magic? The Mariners are winning? I mean, really, Seattle sports had a perfect weekend. I think all their sports teams won. I know our buddy Charles was talking about that. So things are good here, man.
Things are good. It feels nice for everything to be good again. Definitely appreciate that, and definitely, of course, appreciate Rico Tessendor for sponsoring the podcast like he does each and every week. Losses of Rico Tessendor. Again, if you're going to go out there and kind of fall down and somehow double jump in the air and do all of the fun, crazy things that Mason Marchment does, but life's making you do that stuff out in the real world, it's probably time to call Rico over at 425-778-9800. Hopefully you're never in need of his services, but I'd say at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you give him a call or you visit his website at ricotessendor.com to schedule a free consultation, because he will help you out as a fellow member of the ECH community. I want to thank everybody for listening, and we will see you all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.